Good morning. Welcome to this TIER webinar. I am so glad that you are all here with us today. This is our first webinar series that we are providing for this the school year. The goal or the focus of this webinar series is to attend to intervention within remote learning environments, given the current conditions that we are functioning in for this academic year. This particular webinar session will be a focus on MTSS for academics within remote learning environments. And so our goal is to provide some guidance and support of how we can attend to content areas within our remote learning environments. For this network, TIER, just to give a bit of background on TIER, TIER is a TA-funded network that is geared towards best practices, intervention best practices within academics and behavior. And so just like this webinar series, or this particular webinar is focused on academics, our following sessions that we will hold will be focused on behavior as well. And so we'll have other sessions that are focused on behavior. So I have a moderator who is controlling my slides. So next slide, moderator. All right, so the TIER network provides comprehensive intervention best practices, as I said before, and it's for all Texas educators that serve students. And so our goal is to give you that support when it comes to intervention and what would be, I guess, appropriate and necessary to ensure academic and behavioral growth within our student populations. Today, our presenter is Dr. Janice Henry. I didn't introduce myself. I am Burnett Blake. I am a TIER coordinator here, and I have been with TIER since its onset. And we have Dr. Janice Henry as our new project director. Hi, Janice. There she is. Surprise. She has been with TIER for a bit, and she is going to be providing our information today. Her background is a wide spectrum. She has worked within K through 12, the higher ed realm, as well as service as within educational leadership, instructional coach, you name it. She technical assistance, I believe, yes, and classroom teaching. So she is well versed in the education world, and so she is going to be providing our presentation for today. So Janice, if you would like to take it over.
I sure will. Thank you so much, Burnett. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We'll get started. In today's webinar, we'll do the following. Introduce the multi-tiered systems of support framework. We'll identify strategies for providing remote academic support for students who need intervention, and provide resources schools can use to maintain continuity of learning. As you can see, there are handouts available, so we'll go through the session today and I will share different resources with you, and there are links to those resources available in the handout for download. Let's start by discussing the MTSS framework. A multi-tiered systems of support framework provides an integrated system to support the academic and behavioral needs of students. It uses assessment data to provide differentiated instruction for all students. It assists with identifying students in need of additional support. These foundational components of MTSS, supporting students, assessment data, and identifying needs, are important within typical learning environments, but even more critical as we think about remote learning environments to ensure that students continue to practice at their current level and solidify requisite skills needed to continue progress towards MTSS intervention goals. As we know, universal instruction, also referred to as Tier 1 or primary prevention, is designed for all students. Universal instruction occurs in the general education classroom for all students. It includes evidence-based practices, research-based curriculum, differentiation, scaffolded instruction, and universal design for learning. Universal instruction meets the needs of around 80% of a school's population for both academics and behavior. Targeted intervention, often referred to as Tier 2 or secondary prevention, is designed for students who are experiencing difficulty in academics and/or behavior. Targeted intervention can occur in many settings, inside or outside of the general education classroom, and typically targeted intervention occurs in small groups with students who have homogeneous learning needs. Typically, about 20% of students may require targeted intervention. Intensive intervention, often called Tier 3 or tertiary prevention, is designed for students who are not making adequate progress in their current intervention program, often a Tier 2 evidence-based intervention, or students who have persistently low academic achievement or have high intensity frequency behavior. Intensive intervention may occur within special education or outside of special education. Schools have different ways that they conceptualize and implement intensive intervention. Beyond universal and targeted intervention, a much smaller number of students, typically about 5% or less, require intensive intervention. Students who are receiving intervention within an MTSS framework in school settings likely will continue to need support during remote learning. Depending on the nature of the intervention services and the technology capabilities of the school and home, intervention may be able to continue with minimal interruption or change. Now that we've looked at the foundational components of the MTSS framework, let's think about how we maintain continuity of learning by providing remote academic support. As we moved into the remote learning environment, the conversation around intervention delivery shifted from infrastructure level access, internet connectivity and speed, hardware and software, and device compatibility, to student level access, cognitive and executive functioning, thinking about attentional control, working memory, and those things, use of assistive technology. We started using text-to-speech more and word prediction for students, and physical or sensory concerns, the sensory overload that we have to think about with students, or distractions from background noises. This shift welcomed a much needed conversation around how we plan to provide intervention and assessments for students with learning needs in a remote environment. Remote instructional modalities can be grouped into two categories: synchronous instruction and asynchronous instruction. Synchronous instruction allows learning to occur in real time with our videos and teleconferencing, our online class sessions, or our live streamed lessons. Asynchronous instruction allows learning to occur in a flexible, independently scheduled way through our self-paced modules, recorded videos or lessons, posted notes, materials, and discussions. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. Therefore, considerations should be made for a hybrid or a blended approach, which allows for both modalities to occur and to carry out our intervention. When the option allows, consider using synchronous instruction for the acquisition of our new skills and concepts, and asynchronous learning for repeated practice and mastery of skills and concepts. Just like in traditional brick and mortar school settings, families are critical players we need to involve to ensure that our students are successful. In fact, families may play an even more critical role in remote learning, especially for our students who may require additional physical, behavioral, and/or academic support. This requires schools and educators to take the lead on ensuring families understand the what and the how. To support their child's remote learning, families should know what information should be accessed and where to access it. They should know the content and schedule for intervention and what intervention or interventions their child is receiving. Additionally, they need to know what virtual platforms or the technology that's being leveraged, and any specific information that they need to help their child log on. To support a family's understanding of the technologies being used, consider administering a survey, and that can include specific information about the technology, student accessibility needs. For example, if the cursor size needs to be larger for a student with a visual impairment, this is something that you can consider and get information from on that survey. Also, information about behavioral or motivational issues that have occurred during any remote learning in the past. This is essential as we consider equity. We need to be cognizant of the reality that our students and families may be facing. Families may have barriers that could inhibit the level of support that they're able to provide. These may include language barriers, job or household responsibilities, caring for other children or family members. It can include cognitive or mental health needs of their own. We cannot assume that the barriers are in any way a fault. Rather, we need to consider these barriers from the onset to make sure that we are being proactive, thoughtful, and planning how each student that receives instruction and intervention will best be served through remote learning. The approach for one student will likely need to be adapted on a student-by-student basis. While many of the same validated Tier 2 intervention programs can be utilized during remote intervention as was used during face-to-face instruction, you may consider the following tips provided by the National Center on Intensive Intervention. First, review the lesson plan and practice presenting the examples ahead of time. Also, decide how the student will receive feedback and practice different ways of providing feedback. You want to practice using the technology platform that you will be using for the intervention or instruction. Next, adapt the lesson based on your knowledge of the student and their learning environment, and this could be based on information that you gathered in the survey. For example, you may not be able to see the student writing, so you want to prepare for that and consider encouraging students to think out loud as they work or build a self-monitoring component into the lesson. That can help with motivation. Next, prepare the materials. This could include uploading the necessary PowerPoint. You want to make sure this can be assisting in helping to facilitate the intervention. You also want to decide if students need the materials printed and plan to provide those in advance. To ensure equity, determine how you will provide remote intervention to students that do not have access to technology. This could include providing the students with printed materials ahead of the intervention and then scheduling those sessions to be conducted over the telephone. During your first intervention session with students, you want to establish clear routines and behavioral expectations. For example, how does the student raise their hand during instruction? In subsequent sessions, take the time to reinforce those expectations and reinforce the routines that are in place. Next, you want to confirm that the student has all necessary materials and understands how to use the technology. Be flexible, adapt the lesson as needed, and realize that technical glitches are a part of remote learning. The example that you see here on the slide, using the mnemonic BRAVE, it's to help students remember to do their best, to act responsibly, to take certain actions like facing the camera and actively participating. Also, knowing how to voice their needs and how to engage. When providing remote intervention, you will want to use and follow a similar structure for your intervention sessions each time. Regardless of the changes with instructional modalities or technologies, the principles of explicit instruction remain key for considering remote academic support. Model the skill for the student. Provide clear explanations and demonstrations. You want to provide purposeful practice, feedback, and response opportunities. Response opportunities in a remote environment may include using video, chat features, electronic polls, or other synchronous tools for real-time communication with learners. For more information specifically about explicit instruction, visit the intensiveintervention.org website, where the National Center on Intensive Intervention, along with the University of Connecticut, have developed a course on the features of explicit instruction. You will find the reference for that link on the handout that you're able to download. An important element of explicit instruction is practice. In a remote setting, students will need the opportunity for guided practice and independent practice. Guided practice is the educator or adult and students working together. This can occur remotely by incorporating face-to-face options with video calls. Guided practice that is highly scaffolded and modeled can lead students to independent practice through reducing the scaffolding and modeling. For example, using a think, pair, share, or having students complete a sentence stem is guided practice that is closer to modeling and closer to the modeling component of teaching and learning. This can be done using a video call or chat feature, or with students in small groups, using remote breakout rooms where the teacher is readily available to provide support and feedback. The National Center on Intensive Intervention recently conducted a national community of practice on providing interventions in a remote environment. One of the educator participants was Karen McWilliams, a 504 coordinator and dyslexia teacher in Rochelle ISD in Texas. In the video example that is shown here on the slide, Ms. McWilliams uses technology to teach foundational reading skills to a student in elementary. The video and supplementary materials can be found on NCII's website, but let's go ahead and take a brief look at the video and watch how she conducts intervention.
Hi, Connor. Welcome to class today, and I'm going to show you our PowerPoint of what we're going to do today. Let me share my screen with you. Here we go. And can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And so remember, as always, in class, we are going to stay involved because I know you're at home. So we want to make sure you're actively listening and involved in the lesson. So we always want to follow directions also, and we want to have some fun, right? So here we go. The first thing we're going to do, this shows you all the things that are going to be in our lesson today. We're going to do a visual drill, and you know what that is, where we just flash the different spellings and you say the sounds that those spellings make. And today on that we're going to be working on digraph spellings and our R-controlled spellings, our bossy R's. And then we're going to do the say it, move it game. Then we're going to do the sorting game. And in both of those, we're going to count the phonemes, the little bitty sounds in each word. And then we're going to look at our irregular words, where we just say them as fast as we can or read them. And then we're going to do some sentence writing. And then we're going to look at a text and read a little bit of a story in a real text about Africa, which I know you really like. So I picked that just for you. Okay, so let's get started. Let's go through our visual drill. So can you see that letter? And we know that's super easy, the letter A, but today we're going to look at some consonant digraphs. And we know those are two letters that make one sound, right? So let's go through these. Digraph CH says ch. So can you say it with me? Ch. Ch. Good. Digraph SH says sh. Digraph TH. Digraph PH. Digraph WH. Okay, now make sure on those you're not adding to the end. It's not wah, it's just that air sound. Okay, now let's do our R-controlled vowels. Combination AR says R, or it can also say R. Combination ER, R. Combination R. Combination OR. Make sure you're looking at the letters. Good. Or, and it can also say Remember our keyword for that one? Worm. So it can also just say Combination UR. All right, very good. So now we have done the visual drill. So see how you get a check there? So you can see as we're progressing along how far you've come. So here we are. What are we doing next?
Just say it and move it.
Okay, good job. Say, move it. Now this time we're going to focus on the phonemes in a word. So each little sound is a phoneme. So as we do this, I'm going to move the little circles up here on the line. So here we go. Let's do the word moon. Ready? Let's say, count with your fingers. How many phonemes does moon have?
2.
Show me your fingers.
Moon.
Moo. Show me your fingers. I can't see them. Do it with me. Ooh. Let me hear you. Ooh. Okay, so let's move the circles. Okay, so let's do the word moon. Here we go. Ooh. How many phonemes does the word moon have?
3.
Right, 3 phonemes. And remember, phonemes are those little bitty sounds. Okay, let's put them back. And let's do another word. You pick a word this time. Which word do you think we should do? With just a few phonemes.
Paper.
Paper. Okay, here we go. Let's do it with our fingers first. A. Okay, let's do it with the circles. A. Good. Because we know that is a combination sound, right? So how many phonemes does paper have?
4.
Okay, very good. What if we wanted to add a sound to that, like papers? Make sure you turn in all your papers at the end of class. A, Z. Right? A, Z. Papers. So that would have 5 phonemes. And if we wanted to change one out, we could do that as well, right? Like if I wanted to change it to pilers. If there was such a thing as maybe a job that you piled things, that could be a piler. So if you have multiple pilers, so what would we need to change out? I. So we would want to change that out, right? And change it to I instead of A. L. So instead of we want to change it to, instead of, we want to change it to So pilers. What's our new word?
Pilers.
Pilers. That's a really weird word. But maybe someday, if you're paid, you were talking about helping your dad pile up rocks, right? So you were kind of a piler for that day. You and your brother could be pilers. Okay. Let's do one more word. Let's do water, because our story today has to do with water. So let's count the phonemes in water. Let's use our fingers. Ready? Aw. How many phonemes?
4.
Let's count them here.
1.
Aw. Water. Okay, very good.
As you were able to see, Ms. McWilliams engaged the student in both physical and verbal responses during intervention. Take a minute to think about some of the things that you noticed happening during the video. I hope that you reflected on thinking that you were able to see Ms. McWilliams make connections to the student's home life, which is really important in remote learning, and also really had some things set up in place for the student to help with those expectations that were needed during intervention. So that was a good glimpse at what guided practice might look like in a remote environment. I encourage you to use the link that's also provided in the handouts so that you can go back and complete watching the video and see the remainder of the intervention that was taking place. Now we'll talk about independent practice. With independent practice, the student is practicing on their own. In comparison to the guided practice example, having students think of a response on their own and share it or create something, perhaps a sentence using a targeted vocabulary word, those things are closer to independent practice. And these activities that are independent can take place during asynchronous learning following the guided practice or remote intervention. Last, you want to ensure that you have a plan in place to monitor and track student progress. Progress should always be monitored in order to determine if the intervention is having an effect. Progress monitoring is an essential part of a multi-tiered system of support framework, specifically with intervention. It allows educators and administrators to understand whether students are responding to interventions and if adaptations are needed. The need for progress monitoring is more crucial now than ever before as students are returning to their learning environments and returning to instruction again. Progress monitoring data can help you to consider the student's rate of improvement and ensure that students who need intervention, even if for a short time, receive it. During remote learning, educators and administrators need to rethink how they collect and analyze progress monitoring data. Determine whether the tool you are using during face-to-face intervention and instruction can also be used in a remote environment. The National Center on Intensive Intervention has a repository of resources from progress monitoring vendors on their website. You may want to visit their website to see if the progress monitoring tool that you're using is ready to be used in a remote environment. You will also want to consider how you are sharing and communicating the results of progress monitoring with the families. Understand the limitations of progress monitoring in a remote environment and be sure to lean on colleagues to problem solve. If you're not currently using a progress monitoring tool, TIER has developed a tool that will soon be available, and we will launch that in the coming weeks when we share our resources and our website. I'm going to pause for a moment and see if we have any questions. Burnett, our moderator here for this session, I'm going to give you a chance to jump in here and let's see if we have any questions so far.
Yeah, at this point, we don't have any questions. Everyone is listening very intently. There's lots of data that I'm getting right now as far as engagement. So everyone is just fully engaged right now. We had a few questions about audio, but other than that, I think we're okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We'll continue along talking about intensifying intervention.
Great.
After a better understanding of the remote academic supports and the resources and tools that you're using, you may be left with some questions. What if the Tier 1 instruction is meeting the needs of less than 80% of my students? Or what do I do if my intervention is not working? So let's discuss intensifying interventions. Upon return to school this fall, you may have noticed that several of your students appear to need intervention. When Tier 1 instruction is meeting the needs of less than 80% of students, it is important for us to examine and strengthen Tier 1 curriculum. This can be done through intensifying instruction using evidence-based practices and class-wide intervention programs. When considering the instructional modalities and intensification practices, we think about changing the intervention or dosage time. During synchronous or real-time intervention, this may include shorter sessions or increased frequency of sessions. You may also increase response opportunities. However, to change the dosage time with asynchronous intervention, you may provide access to recorded intervention sessions or lean on family supports to assist with practice. When changing the learning environment to promote attention and engagement, synchronous intervention may include small group and individual breakouts or visual cues. As you noticed on the slide in the sample video, there were visual cues for the student there to see how he had progressed along the intervention. Changing the learning environment with asynchronous intervention may include a remote class resource space or a multimedia tech app with resources and activities. When combining cognitive processing strategies with academic learning, synchronous intervention includes using templates for note-taking and graphic organizers, or the use of self-regulation and self-monitoring supports. Combining strategies with asynchronous intervention may include remote organization skills, and also our self-regulation and self-monitoring supports. Finally, when intensifying practices by modifying the delivery of instruction, synchronous intervention includes explicit, systematic instruction with visual and auditory aids. Also, modify instruction with increased real-time feedback. Modifying asynchronous intervention may include opportunities for structured, independent practice with feedback. For example, a video submission, or having work posted, or posted work, or an online quiz. When providing intervention to students, consider the following factors first. Did I provide the intervention with fidelity? Did the student receive all the sessions they were supposed to receive? Was the intervention matched appropriately to the student's need? And are most of my other students responding to the intervention as evidenced through the progress monitoring graphs? If the answer is yes to all of those questions from the previous slide, consider intensifying the current intervention using the dimensions noted here in the taxonomy of intervention intensity. A PDF of this document can be found using one of the resources that are linked on the handout. The taxonomy of intervention was developed to support educators in evaluating and building intervention intensity, considering the dimensions of strength, dosage, alignment, attention to transfer, comprehensiveness, behavioral support, and individualization. When considering the strength of the program, effect sizes above 0.25 indicate an intervention has value in improving outcomes. The preferred sizes are 0.50 or higher for strong effect. The dimension of dosage, similar to what we discussed on the previous slide, refers to the number of opportunities that a student has to respond and receive corrective feedback. It also refers to the size of the instructional group. the number of minutes each session lasts, and the number of sessions provided each week. The dimension of alignment is looking at how well the program addresses the student's full set of academic skill deficits and about focus. Attention to transfer refers to the extent to which the intervention is designed to help students transfer skills and realize connections between skills mastered and related skills. The dimension of comprehensiveness refers to incorporating the principles of explicit instruction, including those practice opportunities. Behavioral support is the extent to which self-regulation and executive function components are incorporated and behavioral principles used to minimize non-productive behavior. Individualization helps with addressing students' complex learning needs. I encourage you to visit the link on the resource page for additional information. You will see that it's organized by academics and behavioral support. Finally, I'll share a few additional resources with you that are available and provided by the National Center on Intensive Intervention and the Texas Education Agency that can be used to maintain continuity of learning. The first resource is NCII's toolkit that practitioners can use when designing and delivering intensive intervention. The Learn section provides examples on how lessons can show increasing intensity of intervention. If intervention in a remote setting needs to be intensified, these tools can be used to help to know how to intensify the instruction and the lesson. The Plan section provides a downloadable planning worksheet to walk you through the process of planning for intensifying intervention. This process can be used when considering remote academic support. The Implementation section is the point at which current practice is adapted to meet the learning needs of students in a remote environment based on the planning section. So you'll take that information that you've created in the planning section and really begin thinking about how we implement it. The Reflect section provides a downloadable lesson reflection template that can be used to reflect on cognitive processing strategies that have been used in a remote intervention, along with the explicit instruction elements to support students' learning. The Refine section provides a downloadable supplemental resource guide to help when additional information is still needed to support students' learning. The next resource is the Texas Home Learning website. This is a TEA-funded project which includes a freely accessible, optional, aligned suite of resources that educators can use fully or in part to support the learning in a remote environment. Resources are being added regularly. The last resource I mentioned on the slide that discussed guided and independent practice. This is the COVID-19 FAQ document that can be found on the TEA website and is on guiding questions for educators providing multi-tiered systems of support intervention. The FAQ document also includes additional resources for academic and behavioral support, such as the difference between remote intervention support and traditional school-based MTSS interventions. I encourage you to download this resource as well for additional information. This concludes our sharing of resources, and we will now move into our portion, question and answer.
Thank you, Janice. That's awesome. Thank you so much for your presentation. All the information that you provided, I'm sure, is well received, and everyone here is very grateful for the development of your presentation. So thank you very much. Let's take a look. Yeah, so we do have a question. So based on, it's not a content question, will the presentation be shared? So at one point, we will provide access to a transcribed recorded webinar session for all sessions within this series. And so that will be available on our being developed website as it's being constructed. Is still in its development phases, but we're nearing the end. So soon you guys will have access to that, and as well as Dr. Henry said, the progress monitoring tool as well. Let's see. Thank you, Carla. Carla said great information. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Where can we download the material? So within the document that is in your upper right corner of your screen, you should see an icon that has links to the 2 shared documents for this webinar. Those 2 documents include the resources that Janice was referring to, in addition to upcoming webinar sessions, so that you guys can join us again for next Wednesday. All of our webinar sessions will be held on Wednesdays at 9 o'clock, so that there is consistency and you guys can join us and try to get your schedules aligned with that. Thank you, Nicole, for that question. And then as far as the PowerPoint, we will see about that, but at this point we do for sure will have the transcribed webinar session so that you guys can have access to that. So those are our questions. Thank you guys so much. Lots of thank yous. You guys are awesome. Look at that. Is there a date when intervention should begin and by? That's one question that we do have. Is there a certain question that, sorry, a certain date when we should begin interventions for this particular school year, Janice?
Thank you for that question. And thinking about beginning intervention, we need to begin intervention as soon as we know students need it. So thinking about the needs of your students and when intervention can begin as soon as possible is what I would say for that.
Yeah, for sure. Getting those screeners and getting that initial data point, I think, is a huge piece to ensure that you have a baseline of where to start, and using those evidence-based and research-based intervention programs that you do have on your campuses are extremely important. So yes, for sure, I agree with you, Janice.
Yes, and I would say, it's very important to make sure that the plan is in place for what intervention will occur. And as you mentioned, that it's evidence-based. So looking at all of the resources that we shared and just ensuring that the plan has happened. So you could look back at the resource that we shared on going through the planning process for intensifying intervention, just to be able to help getting the plan in place for the intervention to be rolled out as soon as possible.
Awesome. Well, I think that's it. So as you guys can see, our upcoming webinar sessions will be next Wednesday with Dr. Powell. We have many registrants for that particular webinar. So if you aren't registered, please use one of the document that we provided to register if you'd like to join us. Again, that session will begin at 9 o'clock. As you can see, the following week, we will have reading interventions, and then, as you can see, the others, the behavior and behavior intervention. So we hope that you guys come back to see us. Within this particular, specifically for this session, we will have a survey upon the close of this webinar. So please attend to the survey. We would really love your feedback. The thank yous in the question box is great, but we need a little bit more information because we want to continue to plan our webinar sessions based on what you need. And so as we can research different interventions, evidence-based research interventions that will help you assist your populations. So the survey will be provided upon the close of this session. In addition to those who have attended, we will get you a certificate of completion for your attendance for this session as well. So thank you guys so much. We hope to see you next Wednesday at 9 o'clock. I'll be here. We'll have a different presenter, but I'll be here with you guys. And we hope that what you've received today has been helpful and that you can use it as soon as possible and apply it within your intervention systems. So thank you guys so much for joining us.